Hello, my name is Cedric Tannen. I'm here with Deja Baker and Miss Marissa Sames, who is a Chesapeake Bay saver. And we are here to talk about oysters in the Chesapeake Bay.
No, thanks for having me, guys.
Alright. So our first question for you would be, what is really an oyster farm? What is its purpose and what is it here for?
So an oyster farm, in general, would be considered aquaculture in the Chesapeake Bay. Organization in which the farm will do everything from growing the oyster on spat on shell to harvesting it. So in one location, they'll have a laboratory where they're growing their oyster spat. They'll produce the spat in order for it to go onto the shell. Mm-hmm. They'll grow the shell in their leased land so that they can watch it grow, monitor it. And then once it's ready for harvest after 2 to 3 years, whichever the size they wish to have, they'll harvest it and they'll sell it. So they do everything in one location, whereas the public fishery, where watermen will go out and harvest there, they'll take off of the public fishery land, and the aquaculture farm will have their own leased land that they take the oysters from.
Who currently are the big voices of oysters? Like, who is really advocating for the watermen and for the aquaculturalists?
So they're pretty much lobbying for themselves. The big voices for oysters in general would be people such as the Chesapeake Bay Savers, the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, the River Keepers. Everybody's overall goal is to have more oysters in the Chesapeake Bay. That's the common theme between everybody. And everybody is trying to have a huge voice in themselves because everybody wants to fight for their own battles. The Oyster Advisory Commission works really well with kind of hearing all sides of it. So hearing the sides of the aquaculturists, hearing the sides of the watermen, hearing the sides of the environmentalists, and kind of figuring out a common ground to make everyone happy. There's been a lot of issues this year in regards to oyster harvesting with the watermen. So the Chesapeake Bay Savers just put together a bill called House Bill 924 because they were talking about opening up oyster sanctuaries to harvest to the watermen. And the Chesapeake Bay Savers, we worked on a bill last year called the Sustainable Oyster Population and Fisheries Act. And in that, we created the bill in order for us to kind of get a overall view of the number of oysters in the Chesapeake Bay. It's always said that we are down to 1% to 2% of the natural oyster levels that we used to have historically.
Wow.
So we're at a huge low. And that's why the environmentalists are working so hard to restore it. And the Chesapeake Bay Savers, one of our first bills that we passed was to put more sanctuaries in the bay. So when we heard that they wanted to open up our sanctuaries to harvest, we were like, no, you cannot take away our... So we have spent millions of dollars, millions of taxpayer dollars in order for us to put in these sanctuaries, in order to keep up with them. And not only do the sanctuaries help with the livelihood of the fish and the water, the things that live in the Chesapeake Bay, but the sanctuaries also produce natural spat set for the rest of the Chesapeake Bay.
So it helps the whole...
Yeah, so it helps the watermen, it helps all of the public fishery, it helps the aquaculture. So in our opinion, we are trying to help everybody to get the common theme, have more oysters in the Chesapeake Bay.
Right.
But we just passed the House Bill 924 in order for us to keep our oyster sanctuaries as sanctuaries, which the watermen are not happy about, but what everybody just doesn't seem to understand is without the sanctuaries, we're not going to have other oysters. We need the big oysters, we need the sanctuaries, we need them to restore the Chesapeake Bay.
The oyster has a hearty appetite. As time-lapse photography reveals, adult oysters are capable of pumping and straining up to 2 gallons of water in an hour. The simple act of eating makes them the bay's most effective water filtration system. It has been estimated that prior to the 1880s, the oyster population was capable of cleansing a volume of water equal to the 18 trillion gallons of the Chesapeake in a matter of days. Today, it would take the bay's decimated oyster population over a year